The emergency broadcast crackled through space on all known frequencies, a desperate plea that reached every corner of the galaxy. The Zephyrian colony ship Endless Hope drifted helplessly in the void, its engines dead and life support systems failing. 300,000 souls aboard faced certain death within 72 hours. "This is Captain Valak of the Zephyrian vessel Endless Hope," the transmission repeated endlessly. "We require immediate medical assistance. Our population suffers from Crimson Plague. Repeat, we need medical ships, medical supplies, quarantine facilities. Please, anyone who can help." The plague had struck without warning during their long journey to the outer colonies. What began as a simple respiratory illness had mutated into something far deadlier. The Zephyrians, with their delicate blue-scaled skin and fragile respiratory systems, were dying by the thousands. Their own medical facilities had been overwhelmed within days. Across the galaxy, various species received the distress call. The Altarians, known for their advanced medical technology, calculated the risk and decided against intervention. The plague might spread to their own population. The Centaurian Federation held emergency sessions but concluded they lacked the resources for such a massive rescue operation. The Vegan Collective, despite their reputation for compassion, determined the journey would take too long. One by one, the major powers of the galaxy offered their regrets but declined to help. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the holographic display that showed the Endless Hope's position. The human-controlled sectors were still considered backwater territory by most galactic standards. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and many species still viewed them as primitive newcomers. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez approached with a datapad. "We've intercepted the Zephyrian distress call. The situation looks desperate." Chen studied the information. The Zephyrians were dying, and no one was coming to help them. The nearest human medical facilities were aboard the hospital ships Mercy and Compassion, but they were designed for human physiology. The humans had no experience treating Zephyrian biology. "Ma'am," Rodriguez continued, "I should point out that we're not equipped for this kind of operation. Our medical ships aren't designed for alien biology, and we don't have quarantine facilities for 300,000 beings." Chen nodded, but something in her expression had already hardened into determination. "What ships do we have in that sector?" "The Third Fleet is conducting training exercises about 6 hours from their position. That's the Dauntless, Indomitable, and Resolute. All Titan-class heavy cruisers." "Warships," Chen murmured. The irony wasn't lost on her. The Zephyrians had asked for medical help, and all humanity could offer were instruments of war. She thought about the reputation humans were building in the galaxy. They were seen as aggressive, militaristic, always ready for a fight. Most species assumed that's all they were good for. Perhaps it was time to show them something different. "Send a priority message to Admiral Martinez on the Dauntless," Chen ordered. "Tell him to proceed to the Zephyrian ship immediately." Rodriguez hesitated. "Admiral, with respect, what can warships do for a medical crisis? We're talking about 300,000 sick aliens here." Chen turned to face him fully. "Commander, what's the first thing we teach our officers about human military doctrine?" "Adapt and overcome, ma'am." "Exactly. And what's the most important principle of human warfare?" Rodriguez straightened. "Leave no one behind." "The Zephyrians aren't human, Commander, but right now they're in trouble and no one else is coming. That makes them our responsibility." 6 hours later, Admiral Carlos Martinez received the transmission aboard the Dauntless. A career military officer with 30 years of service, Martinez had seen combat in 3 different conflicts. He was used to dealing with weapons, tactics, and enemy positions. Medical emergencies involving alien species were definitely outside his expertise. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Park, his science officer, looked up from her console. "We're detecting the Zephyrian vessel. It's massive. At least twice the size of our largest ships." Martinez nodded. Colony ships had to be enormous to carry entire populations across the void. "What's our approach vector?" "Sir," Park continued, "I'm also detecting significant bioreadings. The reports about their casualties appear accurate. I'm reading massive system failures throughout their ship. The Dauntless and her sister ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Endless Hope. The Zephyrian ship was indeed enormous, a graceful construction of flowing curves and organic-looking architecture that stretched for kilometers. But, even from a distance, it was clear the ship was in distress. Sections that should have been lit were dark, and the normal energy signatures of a functioning vessel were weak and erratic. "Hail them," Martinez ordered. The viewscreen flickered to life, showing Captain Valak. The Zephyrian looked exhausted, his normally bright blue scales had faded to a sickly gray, and his large eyes were filled with desperation. "Human vessels," Valak's voice was barely above a whisper. We did not expect military ships. We requested medical assistance." Martinez felt the weight of the moment. Here was a being whose people were dying, who had asked for help and received warships instead. The disappointment in Valak's voice was clear. "Captain Valak," Martinez said carefully, "I'm Admiral Martinez of the Human Space Force. We received your distress call. You're right, we're not medical ships, but we're here to help." "With respect, Admiral," Valak replied, "how can warships help with a medical crisis? We have civilians dying, children suffering. We need doctors, medicine, quarantine facilities." Martinez looked around his bridge at his crew. These were warriors, not healers. They were trained to destroy, not to save. But they were also human, and humans didn't abandon people in need. "Captain, we may not be medical ships, but we have something else to offer. We have human determination, human engineering, and human refusal to accept the impossible." Valak's expression showed confusion and, perhaps, a hint of hope. "Here's what we're going to do," Martinez continued. "We're going to beam over our best engineers, our medical personnel, and anyone else who might be useful. We're going to figure out how to help your people, even if we have to invent new solutions on the spot." "But, Admiral," Valak protested, "the plague could spread to your crews. Your ships aren't equipped for biological containment." Martinez smiled grimly. "Captain, human military vessels are designed to survive in hostile environments. We can create containment protocols. As for the risk to my people..." He looked around his bridge again, seeing the determined faces of his crew. "That's a risk we're willing to take." Within an hour, human personnel were beaming aboard the Endless Hope. Dr. Emma Harrison, the senior medical officer from the Indomitable, led a team of medics and researchers. Chief Engineer Mike Chun from the Resolute brought technical specialists. Commander Sarah Thompson from the Dauntless led a security and logistics team. What they found aboard the Zephyrian ship was heartbreaking. The corridors, designed for the graceful Zephyrian physiology, were filled with the sick and dying. The plague had progressed faster than anyone had anticipated. Zephyrian medical staff, exhausted and overwhelmed, moved between patients with the mechanical motions of those who had long since accepted defeat. Dr. Harrison immediately began working with Dr. Senna, the chief medical officer of the Endless Hope. The language barrier was initially challenging, but humans had become adept at rapid translation protocols during their integration into galactic society. "The progression is unlike anything we've seen," Dr. Senna explained through the translation device. "It attacks their respiratory system first, then spreads to major organs. Our treatments have had minimal effect." Harrison studied the data on her portable scanner, modified with Zephyrian interface protocols that her team had developed during the journey. The readings were troubling. The plague was indeed aggressive, but she noticed patterns that seemed familiar. "This reminds me of something," she muttered, pulling up human medical databases on her device. "The progression, the organ involvement, it's similar to cases we've seen with certain respiratory viruses in humans." Dr. Senna looked at her with surprise. "You've dealt with similar diseases?" "Humans have a history of dealing with plagues," Harrison replied grimly. "We've learned some hard lessons about epidemic response over the centuries." Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Chen was working with the Zephyrian engineering staff to understand their ship systems. The life support was failing not just because of power issues, but because the air filtration systems were overwhelmed with biological contamination. "Your systems are incredibly sophisticated," Chen told Engineer Korvak, the senior technical officer. "But they're designed for normal operations, not epidemic response." Korvak's scales had the same sickly pallor as the rest of his people. "We are a peaceful species, Engineer Chen. We never anticipated needing to combat biological warfare." "This isn't warfare," Chen replied, "but we can treat it like it is. Human ships are designed to survive biological and chemical attacks. We can adapt those principles to help your life support systems. Commander Thompson was coordinating with Zephyrian security to establish quarantine protocols and organize the massive logistical challenge of treating 300,000 patients. The scale was unprecedented, but Thompson had experience managing large-scale operations. We need to think of this like a military campaign, she explained to Security Chief Andrus. We need zones of control, supply lines, and clear command structures. Andrus looked overwhelmed. Commander, we've never dealt with anything like this. Our security forces are trained for maintaining order during colonization, not managing a medical crisis. Then, we'll teach you, Thompson replied. Humans have learned that any crisis can be managed with proper organization and the will to see it through. Back on the bridge of the Dauntless, Admiral Martinez was coordinating with his fleet and establishing communication with Earth. The magnitude of the challenge was becoming clear, but he was also beginning to see possible solutions. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Park reported, our teams are making progress. Dr. Harrison thinks she's identified some treatment protocols that might help, and Chief Chin believes he can improve their life support efficiency by 60%. What about supplies? Martinez asked. That's going to be the challenge, sir. We have enough medical supplies for our crews, but not for 300,000 Zephyrians. We'll need to get creative. Martinez nodded. Creativity had always been a human strength. When faced with impossible odds, humans had a tendency to find ways to make the impossible merely difficult. Open a channel to Earth, he ordered. Priority 1. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. Martinez, report. Admiral, we've made contact with the Zephyrians and begun assistance operations. The situation is worse than reported, but our teams believe they can help. However, we need massive amounts of medical supplies and equipment. Chen nodded. What do you need? Everything, Admiral. And we need it fast. You'll have it. I'm dispatching every available transport ship in the sector. We're also reaching out to civilian vessels that can be pressed into service. Ma'am, Martinez said, this is going to require resources far beyond what a normal military operation would justify. The cost alone. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. Admiral, 50 years ago humanity joined the galactic community. Since then, we've been viewed as aggressive, militaristic, and useful only for conflicts. Today, we have a chance to show the galaxy something different. We have a chance to show them that when humans say we'll help, we mean it. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Besides, Admiral, what's the point of having the most powerful military in this sector if we can't use it to save lives when it matters? Martinez felt a surge of pride in his species and his service. Understood, Admiral. We won't let them down. I know you won't. Earth Command out. As the first day of operations continued, word began to spread throughout the galaxy. The humans, who had been asked for medical assistance and had sent warships instead, were not only helping but were mounting a massive rescue operation. News services picked up the story, and species across the galaxy watched with curiosity and growing amazement. The Altarians, who had refused to help due to contamination risks, monitored human operations with interest. The Centaurian Federation began recalculating their resource assessments. The vegan collective found themselves reconsidering their assumptions about human motivations. Aboard the Endless Hope, the human teams worked around the clock. Dr. Harrison and her team had indeed identified treatment protocols that showed promise. By adapting human antiviral medications and combining them with Zephyrian medical techniques, they were beginning to slow the plague's progression in some patients. Chief Engineer Chen had worked miracles with the life support systems. By implementing human military-grade air filtration protocols and rerouting power from non-essential systems, he had increased the efficiency of the Zephyrian systems beyond their original specifications. Commander Thompson had established quarantine zones and treatment areas throughout the massive ship. Working with Zephyrian personnel, she had created an organizational structure that could handle the enormous patient load. But the scale of the crisis was still overwhelming. Even with human help, thousands of Zephyrians continued to die each day. The teams were making a difference, but it might not be enough. That's when the first human transport ships began arriving. Captain Lisa Wong commanded the Supply Runner, a converted cargo vessel loaded with medical supplies. Behind her came a dozen more ships, everything from military transports to commandeered civilian freighters. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Martinez, Wong reported, "We have 20 tons of medical supplies, portable life support equipment, and enough food and water to support operations for a month." More ships continued to arrive throughout the day. The Nightingale, a hospital ship that had been retrofitted for alien physiology during the journey. The Guardian, carrying portable quarantine facilities. The Hope's Edge, loaded with power generators and technical equipment. But, perhaps most impressive were the volunteers. Word had spread through human space about the rescue operation, and civilians were volunteering to help. Dr. Michael Roberts, a retired physician, came out of retirement to assist with alien medical protocols. Engineer Sarah Kim left her civilian job to help with life support modifications. Nurse practitioners, technicians, logistics specialists, and countless others dropped everything to join the rescue effort. As the second day began, Admiral Martinez stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, watching the growing fleet of human vessels surrounding the Endless Hope. Ships continued to arrive from across human space, each bringing more supplies, more personnel, more hope. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Park reported, "we now have 47 vessels participating in the rescue operation." Dr. Harrison reports that mortality rates have dropped by 30%, and Chief Chin believes we can have their life support systems operating at full efficiency within another day. Martinez nodded, but he knew the real test was still coming. Treating the plague was only part of the challenge. The Zephyrians needed a safe place to complete their journey, facilities for long-term recovery, and assistance rebuilding their society after such devastating losses. "Park, send a message to Admiral Chen on Earth. Tell her we're going to need long-term support for these people. This isn't just a rescue operation anymore. We're talking about helping an entire civilization recover from near extinction." As he spoke, Martinez realized that this operation would define how the galaxy viewed humanity for generations to come. They had asked for medical help and received warships, but those warships had brought something no one expected: the full weight of human determination, compassion, and refusal to abandon anyone in need. The rescue of the Endless Hope was just beginning, but already the galaxy was learning something new about the species they had dismissed as merely militaristic. Humans, it seemed, were capable of waging war against death itself, and they had no intention of losing. The transformation aboard the Endless Hope over the following week was nothing short of miraculous. What had been a ship of despair and death was becoming a testament to human ingenuity and determination. The corridors that had once echoed with the sounds of suffering now buzzed with purposeful activity as human and Zephyrian teams worked together to save lives. Dr. Emma Harrison had established what she called Protocol 7, a treatment regimen that combined human antiviral research with Zephyrian cellular biology. The breakthrough had come when she realized that the plague attacked Zephyrian respiratory systems in a way similar to certain human diseases, but their cellular structure responded differently to treatments. The key was understanding that Zephyrian cells process oxygen at a different rate, she explained to Dr. Senna during one of their daily briefings. "Once we adjusted the medication delivery to account for their metabolism, we started seeing real improvements." Dr. Senna, who had initially been skeptical of human medical capabilities, now looked at Harrison with something approaching awe. "In 3 days, you've achieved what our medical teams couldn't accomplish in weeks. How is this possible?" Harrison smiled tiredly. She had been working 18-hour days, but the results were worth the exhaustion. "Dr. Senna, humans have been fighting diseases for our entire history. We've learned to be creative, to adapt quickly, and to never give up. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what a problem needs." The medical successes were impressive, but they were only part of the story. Chief Engineer Mike Chen had performed what the Zephyrians were calling technical magic with their ship's systems. Working with Engineer Korvac, he had not only repaired the failing life support but had actually improved it beyond its original capabilities. "I don't understand how this is possible," Korvac said, looking at the readouts from the environmental control system. "Our life support is now operating at 120% efficiency. According to our original specifications, this should be impossible." Chen grinned as he made another adjustment to the system. "Korvac, human engineers have a saying: impossible just means no one's figured out how to do it yet. Your systems were beautifully designed, but they were designed for normal operations. We've had to learn to make our systems work under impossible conditions. The improvements went far beyond simple repairs." Chen and his team had integrated human military-grade redundancy protocols throughout the Zephyrian ship. If any system failed now, backup systems would automatically engage. The ship that had been dying was now more robust than when it had left Zephyrian space. Commander Sarah Thompson had worked similar miracles with organization and logistics. The massive ship now operated with military precision, but adapted for Zephyrian culture and psychology. Treatment areas were organized for maximum efficiency, supply distribution followed clear protocols, and everyone aboard knew their role in the ongoing recovery effort. The Zephyrians are naturally cooperative, Thompson explained to Security Chief Andrus. Once we established clear procedures, they adapted beautifully. Your people have an instinctive understanding of working together for the common good. Andrus, whose own health had improved dramatically under human treatment, nodded thoughtfully. We've always been a peaceful species, Commander. But perhaps we were too peaceful. We never learned to fight when fighting was necessary. There's nothing wrong with being peaceful, Thompson replied. But sometimes you have to fight for peace. That's something humans learned a long time ago. The rescue fleet continued to grow. By the end of the first week, over 60 human vessels surrounded the Endless Hope. The variety was astounding: military ships, civilian transports, converted cargo vessels, and even private yachts whose owners had volunteered for the rescue effort. Captain Maya Okafor commanded the Star of Lagos, a civilian passenger liner that had been hastily converted to carry medical supplies and additional personnel. Her ship represented the broader human response to the crisis: civilians who had dropped everything to help complete strangers. I've been carrying passengers between human colonies for 15 years, she told Admiral Martinez during a coordination meeting. But I've never carried cargo more important than what we have now. The Star of Lagos was loaded with specialized equipment that human corporations had donated to the rescue effort. Atmospheric processors from the mining companies, medical equipment from the pharmaceutical firms, and food synthesizers from agricultural cooperatives. The response had been overwhelming. Admiral Martinez was coordinating the entire operation from the Dauntless, but he made daily visits to the Endless Hope to check on progress and maintain morale. What he found during these visits consistently amazed him. Human and Zephyrian children were playing together in the ship's recreational areas, having formed friendships despite the language barrier. Human engineers were teaching Zephyrian technicians new maintenance techniques, while Zephyrian artists were sharing their cultural traditions with fascinated human personnel. Admiral, Captain Volok approached him during one of these visits. The Zephyrian captain looked like a completely different being from the desperate individual Martinez had first encountered. His scales had regained their healthy blue color, and his large eyes now showed hope instead of despair. Captain Volok, Martinez replied. You look much better. Thanks to your people, Volok said. Admiral, I must ask, why did your species do this? We are strangers to you. We have nothing to offer in return for this assistance. Your government sent warships when we asked for medical help, and those warships have saved us. I don't understand. Martinez considered the question carefully. It was one he had been asking himself as the operation continued to expand beyond anything he had originally imagined. Captain, humans have a concept called paying it forward. We help others not because we expect something in return, but because we hope that someone would help us if we were in your situation. But the scale of this operation, Volok pressed. Your species has committed enormous resources to helping us. Military vessels, civilian ships, personnel, supplies, the cost must be enormous. It is, Martinez admitted. But, Captain, humans believe that the cost of not helping would be much higher. Volok looked confused. I don't understand. Martinez gestured toward the bustling activity around them: human and Zephyrian personnel working together, children playing, hope replacing despair. Captain, humans believe that civilized species have a responsibility to help each other. If we had ignored your distress call, if we had calculated the costs and decided you weren't worth saving, what would that say about us? What kind of galaxy would we be creating? The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge of the Dauntless. Lieutenant Commander Park's voice came through Martinez's comm device. Admiral, we're receiving multiple incoming transmissions. Long-range sensors are detecting several alien vessels approaching our position. Martinez felt a chill. The rescue operation had left the human fleet scattered and focused on humanitarian efforts, not military preparedness. If hostile forces were approaching, the fleet was vulnerable. "I'm on my way," he replied, then turned to Valak. "Captain, I need to return to my ship. Continue the recovery operations." Back on the bridge of the Dauntless, Martinez found his crew tracking multiple incoming vessels. The ships were approaching from different directions, and their energy signatures indicated they belonged to different species. "Report," Martinez ordered. "Sir," Park replied, "we have confirmed contacts from at least 6 different alien species. Altarian, Centaurian, Vegan, and several others I can't identify yet. They're all heading for our position." Martinez felt the familiar tension of a potential combat situation. The human fleet was committed to rescue operations, with personnel scattered across dozens of ships and limited combat readiness. If these were hostile forces, the situation could become desperate very quickly. "Time to intercept? The lead ships will arrive in approximately 4 hours, sir." "Battle stations," Martinez ordered. "Recall all non-essential personnel from the Endless Hope. Prepare for possible combat operations." The alert spread throughout the human fleet. Ships began recalling their personnel and preparing defensive positions. The rescue operation continued, but now with the shadow of potential conflict hanging over everything. Dr. Harrison was in the middle of a critical treatment procedure when the alert reached her. She looked up at Commander Thompson, who had come to deliver the message personally. "Doctor, we need to evacuate non-essential personnel," Thompson said. "There are unknown alien ships approaching, and we need to prepare for the possibility of combat." Harrison looked around the medical bay, filled with recovering Zephyrian patients and human medical staff working to save lives. "Commander, these people will die if we stop treatment now. We can't just abandon them." "Doctor, if those ships are hostile, everyone aboard this ship could die. We need to prepare for the worst-case scenario." Dr. Senna, who had been working alongside Harrison, looked up from a patient. "What's happening? Why would there be hostile ships?" Thompson hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "Dr. Senna, we don't know yet. It's possible that other species are responding to help, but it's also possible they see the human rescue operation as a threat." Harrison made a decision that would define her career. "Commander, I'm not leaving these patients. If those ships are hostile, then these people need medical care even more urgently." Throughout the fleet, similar decisions were being made. Engineers refused to abandon critical repairs. Logistics personnel continued supply operations. Civilian volunteers aboard the converted ships declared their intention to continue the rescue regardless of the risks. Captain Maya Okafor summed up the general sentiment in a message to Admiral Martinez: "Admiral, we didn't come this far to turn back at the first sign of danger. Whatever those ships want, we're committed to finishing what we started." The approaching alien vessels maintained communication silence, refusing to respond to human attempts at contact. As they drew closer, their formations became clearer. These were not random arrivals, they were organized fleets from multiple species, all converging on the same location. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Park reported, "the lead vessels are now entering visual range." "I'm detecting." "Admiral, these don't appear to be military formations." Martinez looked at the tactical display with confusion. The approaching ships were indeed from multiple species, but they weren't arranged in attack formations. Instead, they appeared to be approaching in the same way human relief ships had arrived, scattered, with various ship types mixed together. "Open a channel to the lead vessel," Martinez ordered. The view screen activated to show an Altarian commander, her crystalline features reflecting the bridge lights of her ship. Admiral Martinez recognized her as Fleet Commander Zara, a respected officer in the Altarian Space Force. "Admiral Martinez," she said, her voice carrying an unusual tone. "I am Fleet Commander Zara of the Altarian Defense Fleet. We are here to assist with the rescue operation." Martinez felt his confusion deepen. "Fleet Commander, with respect, the Altarian government declined to assist when the distress call was first received." Zara's expression showed something that might have been embarrassment. "Admiral, that decision was made based on risk assessment and resource allocation. However, we have been monitoring your rescue operation for the past week." She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "Admiral, what your species has accomplished here has challenged our assumptions. We initially believed the rescue was impossible, that the costs were too high, that the risks were unacceptable. And now? Now we see 300,000 Zephyrians who are alive because humans refused to accept the impossible. We see a rescue operation that has succeeded beyond anything we thought achievable. We see a species that sent warships to answer a medical emergency and somehow made it work. The communication channel expanded to include other alien commanders. A Centaurian admiral, a vegan collective representative, and several others that Martinez didn't immediately recognize. The Centaurian admiral spoke next. Admiral Martinez, the Centaurian Federation initially determined we lacked the resources for this rescue. We now realize our error was not in our resource calculations, but in our failure to understand what was truly possible. The vegan collective representative added, the vegan collective believed the journey would take too long for effective assistance. Watching your operation has taught us that distance and time are less important than determination and creativity. Fleet Commander Zara continued, Admiral, we are here because you have shown the galaxy something we had forgotten. You have shown us that the measure of a civilization is not its military power or economic strength, but its willingness to help others in need. Martinez felt a surge of pride, but also confusion about the practical implications. Fleet commanders, we appreciate your offers of assistance, but the rescue operation is nearly complete. The immediate crisis has passed. Admiral, Zara replied, the immediate crisis may have passed, but the Zephyrians still face enormous challenges. They need a new home world, they need to rebuild their society, they need long-term medical support as they recover from this plague. The Centaurian admiral nodded. We are here to offer long-term assistance. Planets for colonization, resources for rebuilding, technology for medical monitoring. What you began with your rescue operation, we want to help complete. Over the next several hours, the space around the Endless Hope became the site of the largest interspecies cooperation effort in galactic history. Ships from a dozen different civilizations arrived, each bringing resources, expertise, and personnel. The Altarians brought advanced medical technology and offered several planets suitable for Zephyrian colonization. The Centaurians provided massive resource ships and engineering expertise. The vegan collective sent their best terraforming specialists and agricultural technology. Species that had never cooperated before found themselves working together, united by the example of the human rescue operation. The operation that had begun with 3 human warships responding to a distress call had evolved into a galaxy-wide humanitarian effort. Dr. Harrison found herself coordinating with alien medical specialists whose technology far exceeded human capabilities. But, rather than feeling inadequate, she discovered that her human approach to problem-solving complemented their advanced technology perfectly. Dr. Yena, an Altarian medical specialist, said during a joint consultation, your treatment protocols are remarkably creative. Our technology is more advanced, but your approaches to solving problems are unlike anything we've encountered. Harrison smiled as she watched human and alien medical teams working together. Dr. Yena, humans have learned that the best solutions come from combining different perspectives. Technology is important, but creativity and determination are often more valuable. Chief Engineer Chen was having similar experiences with alien technical specialists. The Centaurian engineers were amazed by his improvised solutions to life support challenges, while he learned advanced techniques that would revolutionize human engineering. Engineer Chen, senior specialist Krava told him, your modifications to Zephyrian life support systems exceed our own theoretical projections. How did you achieve such improvements with primitive human technology? Chen laughed good-naturedly at the description of human technology as primitive. Specialist Krava, humans have learned that the best technology is the technology that works. Sometimes a simple solution is better than an elegant one. Commander Thompson found herself coordinating not just human personnel, but representatives from a dozen species. The logistical challenges were enormous, but the cooperative spirit made everything possible. The most remarkable transformation was in the attitude of the Zephyrians themselves. Captain Valak had gone from desperate despair to cautious hope to amazed gratitude as he watched the galaxy rally to help his people. Admiral Martinez, he said during a meeting of all the species representatives, when we sent our distress call, we hoped for medical assistance. We received something we never expected, we received proof that civilization means caring for others, regardless of species or politics. The meeting was being held aboard the Endless Hope, in a conference room that had been hastily converted from a cargo bay. Representatives from 15 different species sat around a holographic table, planning the long-term recovery of the Zephyrian people. Admiral Martinez looked around the table with amazement. A week ago, he had been conducting routine training exercises. Now he was participating in what might be the most significant interspecies cooperation in galactic history. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I think we've proven something important here. When people ask for help, it doesn't matter what kind of ships you send, as long as you send them with the intention to help." Fleet Commander Zara nodded thoughtfully. "Admiral, your species has taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. You have shown us that military strength and compassionate action are not contradictory. You have shown us that true power lies in the willingness to use that power to help others." The rescue of the Endless Hope was no longer just a human operation. It had become a symbol of what the galaxy could accomplish when species worked together. But everyone present understood that it had begun with 3 human warships answering a call for help, and refusing to accept that warships couldn't provide medical assistance. As the meeting continued and plans were made for the Zephyrians' future, Admiral Martinez reflected on how the situation had evolved. They had asked for medical help, and human warships had answered instead. But those warships had brought something more valuable than any hospital ship could have provided. They had brought the human spirit of determination, creativity, and absolute refusal to abandon people in need. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the best medical help comes not from doctors and medicine, but from the will to fight against death itself, and the determination to never give up on saving lives. 3 months after the first human warships arrived at the Endless Hope, the transformation was complete. What had begun as a desperate rescue operation had evolved into the most successful interspecies cooperation project in galactic history. The dying Zephyrian colony ship had become the centerpiece of a massive humanitarian effort that involved 17 different species and over 200 vessels. The Endless Hope itself was no longer recognizable as the same ship that had sent out desperate distress calls. Human engineering modifications, combined with Altarian medical technology and Centaurian resource management, had turned it into something unprecedented, a fully functional mobile city capable of supporting its population indefinitely while they searched for a new home. Admiral Martinez stood in what had once been the ship's main cargo bay, now converted into a bustling community center. Zephyrian children played alongside human, Altarian, and Centaurian youngsters, their laughter echoing through the vast space. The universal translator systems had been improved to the point where language barriers barely existed anymore. Admiral, Captain Valak approached, his appearance completely transformed from their first meeting. The Zephyrian leader now moved with confident purpose, his blue scales bright and healthy. "I wanted to show you the latest population reports." Martinez accepted the datapad, reading through statistics that told an incredible story. The plague had been completely eradicated. Population levels had not only stabilized but were actually growing as Zephyrians who had been too sick to reproduce began recovering their strength. Most remarkably, the survival rate among the critically ill had reached 93%. "These numbers are incredible, Captain," Martinez said. 3 months ago, we estimated you would lose half your population." Valak's large eyes reflected deep emotion. "Admiral, 3 months ago we had accepted that we would lose everyone. What your species accomplished here goes beyond saving lives, you saved our entire civilization." The success of the medical intervention had exceeded everyone's expectations, but it was the broader implications that truly amazed the galactic community. Species that had been rivals for centuries were now working together effectively. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were being finalized. Diplomatic relationships that had been frozen for years were warming rapidly. Dr. Emma Harrison had become something of a celebrity throughout the galaxy, her treatment protocols now being studied by medical schools on dozens of worlds. But she remained focused on the work itself, continuing to refine and improve the techniques that had saved the Zephyrians. The key insight, she explained to a gathering of galactic medical professionals, was understanding that different species don't just have different biology, they have different approaches to healing itself. Zephyrians heal communally. Their recovery rates improved dramatically when we stopped treating them as isolated patients and started treating them as part of a community. Dr. Senna, who had become Harrison's closest collaborator, nodded enthusiastically. Human medical philosophy emphasizes individual treatment, but Zephyrian physiology responds better to collective healing environments. By combining these approaches, we achieved results neither species could have accomplished alone. The medical breakthroughs were impressive, but they were only one aspect of the broader transformation. Chief Engineer Mike Chen had worked with specialists from multiple species to develop new technologies that were revolutionizing space travel itself. The life support modifications we developed for the Endless Hope are now being implemented throughout the galaxy, Chen explained to a gathering of engineers. Ships can now operate at much higher efficiency levels, and, more importantly, they can adapt to support multiple species simultaneously. Engineer Korvac, who had become Chen's partner in developing these innovations, demonstrated the new systems to the assembled group. What began as an emergency repair has become a new standard for interspecies vessel design. Ships can now reconfigure their environmental systems automatically to support whoever comes aboard. The implications were staggering. Trade between species would become easier, diplomatic missions could be conducted more effectively, and rescue operations like the one that had saved the Zephyrians would be much more feasible in the future. Commander Sarah Thompson had perhaps made the most lasting impact of all. Her organizational protocols, developed to manage the massive rescue operation, had become the template for large-scale interspecies cooperation. The Thompson protocols were now being taught at military academies and diplomatic institutions throughout the galaxy. The key principle, Thompson explained to a gathering of military and diplomatic leaders, is understanding that different species have different strengths and different approaches to problem solving. Success comes from finding ways to combine these strengths rather than trying to impose a single approach. Security Chief Andrus, who had implemented these protocols among the Zephyrians, added his perspective. Commander Thompson taught us that organization and cooperation are not just tools for efficiency, they are tools for survival. What saved us was not just human technology or medical knowledge, but human understanding of how to make different groups work together effectively. The success of the operation had profound implications for human standing in the galactic community. Where once they had been viewed as aggressive newcomers useful only for military conflicts, humans were now seen as natural leaders in crisis situations and interspecies cooperation. Fleet Commander Zara of the Altarians had become one of the strongest advocates for human leadership in galactic affairs. The Altarian government has formally proposed that humans be granted permanent seats on the Galactic Council, she announced during a joint press conference. Their actions during the Zephyrian crisis have proven that they possess the qualities we need in galactic leadership, creativity, determination, and an absolute commitment to helping others. The Centaurian Federation had gone even further, proposing the establishment of a permanent interspecies rescue organization modeled on the human response to the Endless Hope crisis. The Centaurian Federation believes that every species in the galaxy should have access to the kind of assistance that saved the Zephyrians, Admiral Drex announced. We propose the creation of the Galactic Emergency Response Force, to be headquartered on a human world and led by human principles of never abandoning those in need. But, perhaps the most significant change was in how species viewed each other. The success of the rescue operation had proven that cooperation between different civilizations was not only possible but could achieve results that no single species could accomplish alone. Dr. Yenna of the Altarians, who had initially been skeptical of human medical capabilities, now advocated for permanent medical exchange programs. Altarian technology combined with human creativity has produced medical advances that neither of our species could have achieved independently. We need to formalize these cooperative relationships. Specialist Krava of the Centaurians was equally enthusiastic about technological cooperation. Centaurian engineering precision combined with human adaptability has created innovations that are already improving life throughout the galaxy. This kind of cooperation should become standard practice. The Zephyrians themselves had become passionate advocates for interspecies cooperation. Captain Balak had emerged as one of the most influential voices in galactic politics, his personal experience giving him unique authority to speak about the benefits of working together. 3 months ago, my people were dying alone, he told the Galactic Council during a special session. Today, we are alive because 17 different species chose to work together instead of pursuing their individual interests. This is the future the galaxy needs, not competition and isolation, but cooperation and mutual support. The success had also had unexpected effects on human society itself. The response to the Zephyrian crisis had demonstrated the depth of human commitment to helping others, even at significant cost and risk. Recruitment for human space services had increased dramatically as people wanted to be part of an organization that represented such positive values. Admiral Sarah Chan, who had authorized the original rescue mission, found herself appointed as the first human representative to the Galactic Council's Emergency Response Committee. Her decisions during the crisis had proven that human leadership could be both effective and benevolent. The rescue of the Endless Hope taught us all something important, she told the Council. Military strength means nothing if it's not used to protect those who need protection. Economic power means nothing if it's not used to help those who need help. The measure of a civilization is not what it can destroy, but what it chooses to build. The endless hope itself had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. The ship continued to travel between star systems, but it was no longer a desperate refugee vessel. Instead, it had become a mobile embassy, carrying representatives from multiple species and serving as a living example of what interspecies cooperation could achieve. Young people from across the galaxy applied for positions aboard the ship, wanting to be part of the ongoing effort to build bridges between civilizations. The ship's educational programs had become some of the most prestigious in the galaxy, teaching not just technical skills but the principles of cooperation and mutual support. The endless hope represents the future we're building, Captain Balak explained to a group of young applicants from various species. It's a future where your species of origin matters less than your willingness to work together for the common good. The economic implications of the rescue operation were also becoming clear. Trade between species had increased dramatically as the cooperative relationships developed during the crisis translated into ongoing commercial partnerships. Technologies developed during the rescue were being shared freely, accelerating innovation throughout the galaxy. The human corporation that had donated medical supplies found themselves with contracts worth billions of credits as other species sought access to human pharmaceutical products. Engineering firms that had contributed to the life support modifications became leaders in interspecies technology development. Even the civilian shipping companies that had volunteered for the rescue found themselves with exclusive contracts for interspecies transport. But the most important changes were cultural. Species that had maintained careful diplomatic distance for centuries were now sharing art, literature, and scientific knowledge freely. Cultural exchange programs that had been proposed for decades were finally being implemented. Human music had become incredibly popular among Zephyrians, who found the rhythmic patterns soothing to their recovering nervous systems. Altarian crystalline art forms were being adapted by human artists, creating entirely new aesthetic movements. Centaurian mathematical concepts were being integrated into human educational systems. What we're seeing is not just cooperation, observed Dr. Elena Vasquez, a human anthropologist studying the cultural implications of the rescue. We're seeing the emergence of a truly galactic culture, one that incorporates the best elements of multiple species while respecting their individual differences. The political implications were equally significant. The success of the rescue operation had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy, not through military conquest but through demonstrated competence and moral leadership. Human proposals in the Galactic Council were now taken seriously, and human perspectives on galactic issues were actively sought. Humans have earned their place at the table, Fleet Commander Zara observed. Not through force or economics, but through their actions. They have proven that they can be trusted with power because they use that power to help others. The military aspects of the rescue had also changed how warfare itself was viewed in the galaxy. The demonstration that military assets could be used for humanitarian purposes had led to new doctrines throughout galactic militaries. The human model of military service, noted General Frack of the Vegan Collective Defense Forces, emphasizes that military power exists to protect and serve civilian populations. This is a concept that all galactic militaries are now studying and implementing. The rescue protocols developed during the crisis had been formalized into what was being called the Galactic Humanitarian Response Code. Every species in the galaxy had agreed to maintain emergency response capabilities and to commit those capabilities to helping others in need. The code represents a fundamental shift in how we think about galactic citizenship, explained Ambassador Rivera, the human representative to the Galactic Council. We're moving from a model based on competition and self-interest to one based on mutual responsibility and support. As the 3-month anniversary of the rescue approached, preparations were being made for a galaxy-wide celebration. Representatives from every known species would gather at the location where the Endless Hope had first been saved, now officially designated as Cooperation Point. Admiral Martinez, who had been promoted to command the new Galactic Emergency Response Force, would deliver the keynote address. His speech was being broadcast throughout the galaxy, reaching an audience estimated in the trillions. 3 months ago, he would say, the Zephyrians asked for medical help, and human warships answered instead. Today, we understand that sometimes the best medicine is the simple knowledge that you are not alone, that others care about your welfare, and that help will always come when it's truly needed. The rescue of the Endless Hope had proven that the galaxy was capable of extraordinary things when its species worked together. But, more importantly, it had established principles that would guide interspecies relations for generations to come, that no one should suffer alone, that every life has value regardless of species, and that the greatest strength comes not from what you can take, but from what you're willing to give. The warships that had answered a call for medical help had saved more than 300,000 Zephyrian lives. They had saved the idea that different species could work together, that compassion could be as powerful as weapons, and that the future of the galaxy belonged to those who chose cooperation over conflict. As Admiral Martinez prepared for his speech, he reflected on how much had changed since that first desperate distress call. The galaxy was a different place now, a better place, where species looked out for each other and where help would always come to those who needed it. The endless hope had been saved, but, in the process, it had saved something even more important. It had saved the galaxy's faith in the possibility of working together for the common good. 5 years after the rescue of the endless hope, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. What had begun as a simple humanitarian crisis had sparked a revolution in interspecies relations that touched every aspect of galactic civilization. The principles established during those critical first days continued to reshape how species interacted, how they solved problems, and how they viewed their responsibilities to each other. The Galactic Emergency Response Force, headquartered on New Geneva in the Sol system, had become one of the most respected organizations in the galaxy. Under Admiral Martinez's leadership, it had successfully responded to 37 major crises, saving millions of lives and preventing countless conflicts. But, more importantly, it had established the principle that help would always come when it was truly needed. The GERF represents something new in galactic history, Admiral Martinez explained to a gathering of military leaders from 43 species. We're not a military force in the traditional sense. We're proof that military assets can be tools of creation rather than destruction. The organization had evolved far beyond its human origins. While humans remained the largest single species in the GERF, the force now included personnel from every major galactic civilization. The diversity was not just symbolic, it was practical. Different species brought different capabilities, different perspectives, and different solutions to the challenges they faced. Commander Zala, a Altarian officer who served as Martinez's deputy, embodied this evolution. 5 years ago, my species viewed military cooperation as dangerous, she told new recruits during an orientation session. Today, I cannot imagine addressing galactic problems any other way. The human model has taught us that strength shared is strength multiplied. The success of the GERF had fundamentally changed how species viewed military power itself. Wars between civilized species had become virtually unthinkable, not because military capabilities had diminished, but because those capabilities were now primarily directed toward helping others rather than competing with them. Dr. Emma Harrison had become the director of interspecies medical research, a position that didn't exist before the Zephyrian crisis. Her work had revolutionized medicine throughout the galaxy, but her greatest achievement was establishing the principle that medical knowledge belonged to all species, not just those who developed it. The plague that nearly destroyed the Zephyrians taught us that medical threats don't respect species boundaries, she explained to the Galactic Medical Council. Our response to medical challenges can't respect those boundaries either. When we share knowledge freely, everyone benefits. The medical advances that had grown out of the Zephyrian crisis were staggering. Diseases that had plagued various species for millennia were now treatable or preventable. Life expectancy had increased across the galaxy as species shared their medical knowledge and techniques. But, perhaps more importantly, the approach to medicine itself had changed. The Zephyrian model of communal healing had been adapted by dozens of species, while human emergency medicine protocols had become standard throughout the galaxy. The result was a more holistic approach to healthcare that treated patients as part of communities rather than isolated individuals. Chief Engineer Mike Chen now directed the Galactic Infrastructure Development Project, working to bring advanced technology to underdeveloped systems throughout the galaxy. His teams included engineers from 17 different species, each contributing their unique expertise to projects that benefited entire civilizations. The life support modifications we developed for the Endless Hope were just the beginning, Chen told a gathering of infrastructure specialists. We've learned that the best technology comes from combining different approaches to problem solving. No single species has all the answers, but together we can solve any challenge. The technological revolution sparked by interspecies cooperation had transformed daily life throughout the galaxy. Starships were faster, safer, and more efficient. Communication systems could handle dozens of languages simultaneously. Planetary development projects that would have taken centuries for individual species were being completed in decades through cooperative efforts. Commander Sarah Thompson had become the first human member of the Galactic Council's Executive Committee, a position she had earned through her work in developing interspecies cooperation protocols. Her Thompson protocols were now taught as basic principles of effective governance. Effective leadership in a multi-species environment requires understanding that there are many valid approaches to any problem, she explained to newly appointed galactic administrators. Success comes not from imposing your species' methods on others, but from finding ways to combine different methods into something more effective than any single approach. The political transformation of the galaxy was perhaps the most dramatic change of all. The old system of competing nation-states and isolated civilizations had given way to a new model based on cooperation and mutual support. While individual species maintained their autonomy and cultural identity, they now operated within a framework of shared responsibility and common purpose. Captain Valak had become one of the most influential political leaders in the galaxy, his personal experience during the plague giving him unique moral authority. The Zephyrians, once a minor species struggling for survival, were now major players in galactic affairs, their experience with interspecies cooperation making them natural mediators and diplomats. The plague that nearly destroyed us became the foundation for our greatest achievements, Valak told the Galactic Assembly during a session marking the 5th anniversary of the rescue. We learned that survival is not about being strong enough to stand alone, it's about being wise enough to accept help and generous enough to offer it to others. The endless hope itself had become a mobile symbol of galactic unity. No longer a refugee ship, it now served as a traveling embassy and cultural exchange center. Young people from across the galaxy competed for positions aboard the ship, seeing service there as the highest honor available to galactic citizens. The endless hope represents everything we've accomplished and everything we aspire to become, explained Captain Yara, a human officer who now commanded the ship. It's proof that hope itself can be the most powerful force in the galaxy. The ship's current mission was typical of its new role. It was carrying a joint scientific expedition studying a mysterious energy phenomenon in the Andromeda sector. The expedition included researchers from 23 species, each contributing their unique expertise to understanding something that no single species could have investigated alone. The economic impact of interspecies cooperation had exceeded every projection. Trade volumes had increased by over 400% as species shared technologies and resources freely. Economic inequality between species had virtually disappeared as knowledge and technology were distributed based on need rather than market power. Human corporations that had donated resources during the initial rescue had become leaders in interspecies commerce, but they now operated according to new principles that prioritized mutual benefit over profit maximization. The Zephyrian model of business ethics, which emphasized long-term relationships over short-term gains, had become standard throughout the galaxy. The greatest return on investment is not measured in credits, explained Maria Santos, CEO of Terra Galactic Industries, one of the companies that had contributed to the rescue. It's measured in the knowledge that your business helps build a better galaxy for everyone. The Cultural Revolution was equally profound. Art, literature, music, and philosophy from different species were blending to create entirely new forms of expression. The Galactic Renaissance had produced works of beauty and meaning that transcended species boundaries and spoke to universal experiences. Human jazz had merged with Altarian crystalline harmonies to create entirely new musical forms. Zephyrian visual art had influenced human architecture, resulting in buildings that seemed to grow organically from their landscapes. Centaurian mathematical poetry had become popular entertainment throughout the galaxy. We're seeing the emergence of a truly galactic culture, observed Dr. Elena Vasquez, now Director of Interspecies Cultural Studies. Not a culture that erases differences, but one that celebrates them and finds ways to combine them into something richer than any single tradition. The educational revolution was perhaps the most important long-term change. Children throughout the galaxy now learned about other species as a matter of course. Interspecies exchange programs were standard. Young people graduated with skills in multiple languages and understanding of multiple cultural approaches to problem solving. The children growing up today will be the first truly galactic generation, noted Professor Ken, a Zephyrian educator working on curriculum development. They will think of cooperation and mutual support not as idealistic goals, but as basic facts of life. The military transformation had been equally dramatic. While individual species maintained their own defense forces, the concept of interspecies warfare had become virtually obsolete. Military leaders throughout the galaxy had embraced the human model of military service as a tool for protection and assistance rather than conquest. Military power without moral purpose is meaningless, explained General Morrison, the human commander of the Sol Defense Fleet. The rescue of the Endless Hope taught us that true strength comes from using power to help others, not to dominate them. The changes had not been without challenges. Some species had initially resisted the new cooperative model, preferring traditional approaches to governance and economics. Some individuals found the rapid pace of change difficult to accept. But the practical benefits of cooperation had proven so compelling that resistance had gradually faded. Change is always difficult, acknowledged Ambassador Rivera, now the senior human representative to the Galactic Council. But the alternative to change is stagnation, and the galaxy can't afford to stagnate when there are still so many problems to solve and so many people who need help. The technological advances had also created new challenges. Some species worried about losing their cultural identity in the rush toward galactic integration. Others were concerned about becoming too dependent on shared technologies and losing their ability to function independently. These concerns were being addressed through carefully designed policies that protected cultural diversity while promoting cooperation. The preservation protocols ensured that unique cultural traditions and technologies were maintained even as species worked together on common projects. Unity doesn't mean uniformity, explained Dr. Chen, now Director of Cultural Preservation for the Galactic Council. Our goal is to build a galaxy where every species can contribute their unique strengths while benefiting from the strengths of others. As the 5th anniversary celebration approached, preparations were being made for the largest interspecies gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species would gather at Cooperation Point to celebrate the principles that had transformed their civilization. The celebration would feature exhibitions of interspecies technological achievements, cultural performances that showcase the galactic renaissance, and educational programs for young people from across the galaxy. But the centerpiece would be the dedication of the memorial to shared hope, honoring all those who had contributed to the transformation of galactic civilization. Admiral Martinez, now nearing retirement, would deliver the keynote address. His words would be broadcast to every inhabited system in the galaxy, reaching an audience estimated in the hundreds of trillions. 5 years ago, his prepared remarks began, humanity sent warships to answer a call for medical help. Today, we understand that the most powerful medicine is hope itself, hope that help will come when it's needed, hope that no one suffers alone, hope that tomorrow will be better than today. The rescue of the Endless Hope had become more than a historical event, it had become a founding myth for a new kind of galactic civilization. Children learned about it in school, artists created works inspired by it, and political leaders invoked its principles when facing difficult decisions. But, for those who had actually participated in the rescue, the most important legacy was not the fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that they had helped prove something important about the nature of civilization itself. Dr. Harrison, now in her 60s but still actively involved in medical research, reflected on this during an interview marking the anniversary. The plague that struck the Zephyrians was a medical crisis, she said. But what we learned during the rescue was that the most important healing comes from the simple knowledge that you're not alone, that others care about your welfare, and that help will always come when it's truly needed. Chief Engineer Chen, who had recently designed the most advanced starships in galactic history, agreed. The technical problems we solved were important, but the real breakthrough was proving that different species could work together effectively. Once we established that principle, everything else became possible. Commander Thompson, now a senior leader in galactic governance, saw the broader implications. The rescue operation taught us that the strongest military is one that fights for others rather than against them. When you use your strength to help people, you don't make enemies, you make allies. Captain Valak, whose people had been saved by the rescue, offered perhaps the most profound perspective. The humans who came to save us didn't just preserve our lives, they preserved our faith in the possibility of goodness. They proved that in a galaxy full of different species with different interests, there are still beings who will risk everything to help strangers. As the anniversary celebration began, people throughout the galaxy paused to remember and reflect. The transformation that had begun with 3 human warships responding to a distress call had changed everything, not through force or conquest, but through the simple demonstration that help would always come to those who needed it. The galaxy was no longer a collection of competing civilizations struggling for survival and dominance. It had become a community of species working together toward common goals, sharing knowledge and resources freely, and committed to ensuring that no one ever again faced extinction alone. The Zephyrians had asked for medical help, and human warships had answered instead. But those warships had brought the most powerful medicine of all, the knowledge that in a vast and dangerous universe, no one had to face their darkest moments alone. Help would always come, hope would always endure, and tomorrow would always offer the possibility of something better than today. The rescue of the Endless Hope was complete, but its legacy would continue for generations to come, inspiring future civilizations to choose cooperation over conflict, compassion over competition, and hope over despair. The galaxy had learned that the greatest victories are not won through conquest, but through the simple act of reaching out to help those in need.